Okay, good evening, everybody. Today is Tuesday, June 2nd, and this is the Teaching and Learning Committee meeting for the School District of Waukesha Board of Education. I'd like to verify that the meeting has been properly posted.
Yes.
Thank you. We will begin seeking approval of the Teaching and Learning minutes from the May 5th, 2026 meeting.
I so move.
Thank you.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Harland. Anything further? All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. All right, we do have an opportunity for public comment. There's somebody at someone's front door. All right, we have 2 speakers tonight because there are less than 6 speakers. Each individual will be notified at 3 minutes, but allowed up to 5 minutes to complete their comments. We expect all speakers to honor our time limit, refrain from using any inappropriate language, and to be respectful in their comments. Speakers who do not meet these expectations may be prohibited from speaking at future board or committee meetings. Speakers are here to address the board, not the audience. The school board and this board committee does not endorse any comments made by members of the community here tonight. We would like to remind our community members of the impact of their words on others and that our children are watching. We commit to communicating with you in respectful and productive ways and ask that you do the same. We also expect that the audience will be respectful of the speaker and of the board and will refrain from responding with verbal comments, cheering, applause, or any other behavior that will detract from the meeting. Please note that no obstructions can be created between the board and the audience. Visual aids cannot be used, and the area behind the podium should be clear during public comment. Also, in order to respect our speakers and meeting participants, please silence your cell phones. Our first speaker this evening is Paul Reese.
Good evening. When I started coming here, I started noticing something being brought up, and it was like on a yearly basis. When Whittier would be brought up, and we'd do an update on him. And it was heart-wrenching and tragic. It was always filled with failure, and nothing new was ever done. It was, we have these grants, we can throw more money at it, and still have no accountability, and continue to fail these kids. And it went on for years. I came up and I addressed it. I said, when are you guys gonna do something different? You keep doing this every year, and you tell them the same thing, and you keep failing these kids, and you're not doing anything different. It's not working. And then we decided we were to combine Hatfield and Whittier, and everyone said, oh, that's not going to work. Why? Because what you were doing was so successful. But you had a legitimate reason and causation to do this. You were going to combine resources, you were going to make it effective, and make your streamline everything and towards the kids and give them the support they needed. And you know what? Well, lo and behold, it worked. Regardless of what people said, it worked. And they said some nasty things, and I was here. As a matter of fact, they said some nasty things recently because I've read the emails. Just some nasty people hoping for failure of our kids. It is absolutely absurd. And congratulations to Mr. Elliott and what he's done there. It is astonishing. It is breathtaking what he did. You know, hats off to you, dude. Really. Hey, what you did. It is something else. It is something that this district needs to be proud of and hold up always of what can be done. Besides the naysayers wanting to drag it down. I remember Miss Gunderman was called an irrelevant puppet master by one of them, which made me question, do you understand what the word irrelevant means? Or do you not know what the term puppet master means? Because you don't know one of them. You know, there's just some nasty things out there being said. And it was just out of spite and anger. And I get it. Things don't always go perfect in life. You don't plan the outcome of it. You enjoy the day, you know. And what this district did and what it's done for these kids is nothing less than amazing. And Hatfield just speaks volumes of what has been done here. And whenever time I hear Mr. Elliott come up here and speak, I have to lean forward and listen because of what has gone on there. You know, I used to live in that district, and I was going to send my kid anywhere but there. I wouldn't say the same thing today. you know? I used to live over off of, I lived on, off Arcadian. And so that's where my house was. And when I sent my daughter, I sent her to STEM because I wasn't gonna go there. And then we moved, and I sent her to Waukesha Christian Academy. And because I just wasn't gonna have any part of that failing school. So anyways, I'm done for tonight. So again, thank you, Mr. Elliott, for not making that a failing school and all you've put into it. Have a good night. Enjoy your summer.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Tim Moore.
Is this a request that I do a Aretha Franklin impersonation here, or respect? I won't be able to do that. Good evening. I'm Tim Moore, and my wife and I live in Waukesha over on Lake Street. And we've had two sons attend schools here in the district. Tonight, I come to advocate for a comprehensive consideration on your part. That the school district consider adoption of a civics curriculum, not government curriculum, civics curriculum. Specifically, I would ask the board to consider the curriculums researched, published, and sponsored by the Center for Civic Education. The Center for Civic Education has led K through 12 civic education nationwide since its founding in 1965. Its flagship programs, the We the People, the Citizen and the Constitution, and Project Citizen, have reached more than 50 million students over these past decades and has been utilized by close to 500,000 educators throughout the United States. The center also provides professional development for teachers, high-quality curricular materials, inquiry-driven digital and print resources, toolkits for community library-based events, and it supported civic educators at the secondary, elementary, secondary, and to some beginnings stages at the university and college level. Its programs are aligned to social studies standards in every state, supported by a national network of state partners, and receives active endorsement from both sides of the aisle. State bar, foundations, educational, professional, business, community organizations in every state and the District of Columbia. We the People curriculum features instructional strategies including close reading of complex text, complex primary source materials, civic dialogue models, analytical and reflective writing. The curriculum concludes in a culminating summative assessment in the form of a mock congressional hearing where students must demonstrate their understanding of American constitutional principles. Several recent research projects done most notably by Diane Owen of Georgetown University on the We the People curriculum, have consistently demonstrated the program's positive impact on teachers and students alike.
2 minutes.
She found these materials substantially enhanced both students' content knowledge and teachers' pedagogical skills, increasing teacher efficacy in the classroom. I'm going to pop down here. Primarily, the We the People curriculum is quite interesting to me, having taught it a while back. One unit of study is the historical and philosophical foundations of our constitutional system. Another unit is how the framers created the Constitution, Philadelphia Convention, all that kind of stuff. Another unit is how the Constitution has developed over the years to further the principles in the Declaration. Unit 4 is about our institutions, the branches of government, and federalism. Unit 5 is on Bill of Rights. Unit 6 is an interesting unit that presents the meaning of citizenship and the challenges of citizenship in the 21st century. What makes this curriculum unique is it's more than just a simple government course. It's a curriculum in civics, highlighting the philosophy, history, and the development of our system. I am quite happy to provide this committee, or anybody, frankly, as long as they are willing to listen to me for 30 more seconds.
30 seconds.
There's plenty of materials I could provide to this board or any subcommittees of this board, and I'm very willing to entertain further and I would hope that there are further conversations in our future about civics in the Waukesha School District. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we have one action under general business tonight, and that is our requirement to approve School District of Waukesha educational standards. Mrs. Gennerman, do you want to walk us through that?
Sure, I will share just a little bit more about this annual report. So, as shared in the executive summary, as part of Wisconsin Act 55, we're required to bring annually the item of all of the educational standards. And so it's required to be brought forward and discussed and potentially approved by the full board by the first meeting of every school year. So in planning forward for July, for our first full board meeting for next school year, we wanted to bring it forward here as a discussion item. Many of the things included are relatively the same as far as the educational standards. We are required by state statute to notify families and have them available on our website, which we do under the annual notices. As we make some website changes, that will look different, but we will continue to have this as part of the annual notices as we move forward with any website pieces.
Anything else? I wanted to just clarify or ask for clarification on how the literacy standards and our requirements for communicating some of those elements align to this particular requirement. Because I know in this case, we're looking at making sure that people aren't surprised by any of the requirements to progress, which is somewhat aligned to that, but it's under a different
Policy.
legal structure. So how are we addressing that?
Yeah, I can share a little bit more, but really the idea is that school teams come together and they're often looking at student progress and discussing that with parents. And so families are notified of students who may need enrichment or intervention through the policy, which is the third grade promotion attainment policy. We have the whole procedure lined up as far as who the team is, what is the first step, what is the documentation, how frequently parents are informed of the communication that families get.
Any questions? Okay. So if approved here by the committee, this would skip the June board meeting and go to the July board meeting, or do we need to defer, since we don't have a committee in July, are we deferring?
It would go straight to the board meeting in July, like Stacy just said.
Okay.
We just wanted to be proactive since we don't have a committee meeting in July.
Yep. Okay. All right, well, we would be looking to take action on this item. If anyone is interested in making that motion.
I will motion to approve the annual notice of student education standards as required by the 2015 Wisconsin Act 55.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move into our content areas tonight, and we have a bit for social studies this evening. So we are going to start with discussion and possible action on criminal justice curriculum review and resource adoption.
Yeah, so while our team is coming up, Ms. Laura Ryan is coming up, as well as Amy Unti Reynolds. This is the third of 3 reports that we've shared regarding the process that has occurred to research and recommend a potential resource for this criminal justice class. So tonight, these 2 will give a summary of what's been shared, but also share new information regarding financials.
Good evening. In the fall, I think Ms. Reynolds and I were here with one of our criminal justice teachers, and we started to outline our curricular review process for looking at the course for criminal justice. Last month, Ms. Reynolds and I came back and we brought forward the team's recommendation to adopt the digital subscription to Cengage's Intro to Criminal Justice. And today we're going to review a little bit of those last 2 presentations and then talk about the more detailed costs that we have to bring to you today. So just partly as a review, we just wanted to start with that, student need really drives our curriculum review process. And even though you can see the enrollment declining a little bit over the last couple of years, well, an increase recently for next year, this has always remained a very popular elective for our upperclassmen. We have sections in all 3 buildings, all 3 face-to-face buildings, and eAchieve also offers the course. We recently have had an overturning of teachers teaching the course, so I think we have a total of 4 teachers teaching it, 1 who's been teaching it probably since its inception, but 3 fairly new to the course. Since its inception, as far as I know, we've never really had a common or even a curricular resource. It has always been very homegrown. And again, because of the popularity of the course, because of newer teachers teaching it to us, it really became clear to us that we needed to provide a common resource for these, a mentor text per se, for the course. Amy will review the process that we started last September with this teacher team.
Okay. So as we recognize that enrollment in the course was on the rise again, and that it was one of the only social studies courses that had not had any kind of curricular review or, as Laura said, a common curricular resource, the first step was to gather the team of teachers who had been teaching the course. So again, there are 4 of them total. We began by doing a current state analysis. So we consulted with neighboring districts to see if there was a common resource being used and what the approaches were in those districts. What we found was that aside from districts that had a dual enrollment agreement with WCTC, curriculum was completely homegrown and usually owned by an individual teacher who was teaching that course. So what that led us to was to do some inquiry work with the curricular resources, the companies that we'd previously partnered with. So we looked at a total of 4 different resources from 4 different publishers, and the team did so through the lens of how those resources could best align with our semester-long course, which is meant to be a survey of the criminal justice course and system, and then how we could utilize those resources, often designed for an intro college course in the high school setting. So we took quite a bit of time to review those resources, and then also we're in a little bit of a holding pattern because one of them in particular was anticipating a publication of an updated version of their resource. So that's the Introduction to Criminal Justice. And so we wanted to be able to take a look at what that new resource really provided for students, both in the physical text and digitally. So ultimately, the team did that review of those 4 resources and determined that what they felt to be the best resource to meet meet the needs of the course that they were designing and anticipating for their students. They really wanted to focus on the organization of the topics within the text. They wanted to be sure that the resource provided varied opportunities and that it covered in depth the constitutional law, police procedures and practices, and the correction system. So they found that Introduction to Criminal Justice was the resource that did that best. Particularly what they appreciated was that all students and teachers as a team, a district team, would have access to the same text, the same topics, and application opportunities to ensure course alignment to our SDW Social Studies mission and vision, whereby students could engage in curriculum that prepares them to collaborate with others, participate civically, and thrive in our interdependent world. The teachers saw within this resource opportunities for the students to engage with a text that was specifically written by criminal justice experts. So there was that strong content knowledge that was being brought to the table. They also appreciated that the resource offers a robust collection of digital and accessibility tools. Those include the dynamic note-taking and highlighting features to support reading and engaging with the content, and also video cases and you-decide activities, which would help build knowledge but also support daily inquiry practice. As we looked at all of the resources, but in particular, Introduction to Criminal Justice, one of the things that the team engaged in was really trying to look at how they would outline a unit of study. So within the text, it is divided into parts, and each part has a series of chapters. So they looked at chapters 1, 2, and 3 of part 1 to determine what concepts, what topics per se were most pertinent to cover, and then looked at starting to think about how they could utilize some of the resource to build knowledge and experience around those. We also started the work of kind of building our course outline. What are our essential standards or the enduring understandings, political science understandings of this course? And then what would be the description and the common units of study, so that as we settled upon or investigated those resources, we had a grounding piece to come back to. What did we know needed to be covered, and what standards do we know need to be addressed?
So in looking at recommending this text, we had talked last month about the physical text being only paperback and very costly. Amy actually even reached out to them with a comment about how we could get hardcovered U.S. history books for much cheaper, and they did not respond to us. So we will not be purchasing any of the physical text besides the ones that we have already for the teachers to look at. Obviously, with the year subscriptions, 1 year digital is $50, 6 years considerable savings with the $198.75. Right now, we know that there are 172 students enrolled for next year. If we look at getting the 6-year digital license, we would obviously increase that by maybe 180. We always have a couple kids add to this. And so the cost there would be $35,775 total. These numbers do include eAchieve as well, so they would be part of this purchase as well. Time for questions and discussion.
Is it fair to assume that there may be circumstances where, to meet an accommodation, we have to acquire physical text?
We will be having like a couple in each classroom, so I think they could use the text, or if it's, a short couple pages here or there, we would make copies of them or PDF them in Notability.
Once we received these last month, I can say, obviously they're not going to hold up the way a hardcover would, and I haven't spent an entire semester with it, but spent a bit of time with it. It's a high quality paperback. But I think if our teachers can work with the digital versions, that's probably reasonable.
Yeah. Amy was just telling me how they had a meeting the other day, and they're getting very excited about some of the digital tools that they are investigating and finding as they dig further.
Mr. Harland?
My first question is the enrollment numbers obviously do include the e-achieve. Do we know what percentage, like how many of those are on the e-achieve platform?
Very few.
Very few.
Very few.
So we're not expecting I mean, obviously we saw a large drop from 22, 23 to the 23, 24. We're not forecasting any sort of growth in this program here. I mean, the last 3 years has been trending upward. I just don't, the 180, I just don't want to handicap us if.
Correct. I honestly had like 185 there at first, and then I changed it to 180, right? It's always kind of a guessing game in what we do there. I think that there was honestly a drop when some beloved teachers left and some new teachers were taking it on, and I think we are doing a really good job of building that course again, so I think that there could be an increase, but I think we could always add those on in the years to come if need be. And sometimes the publishers are really good with working with us. When we need 10 more, they give us 10 more.
Yeah, no, I appreciate removing not only the variation between the schools, but also year over year if we would have to replace a teacher. So the standardized curriculum across the district is excellent, much appreciated.
Mrs. Voigt and then Mrs. Koenig.
I was very impressed with your work. The concept of being self-curated was one of the things that we did a lot of back in the day. And it, way back, I actually taught business law and worked with crime and law, was the counterpart when I was at North High School. And this is like the resources here are amazing, are very, very good. So I was very pleased with the choice that you made.
Mrs. Koenig?
Thank you. I appreciate the fidelity that this is bringing across the district, by adopting this resource. I understand how hard teachers have worked to curate the things that they have curated, but just that, the idea that we'll now have a common text and the teachers can, work from the same text is very powerful. So I'm a little surprised it took this long, but I'm so glad we're getting to this one because this is a popular course and it is important that we have that fidelity, across our district. So I also agree the paperback is just not practical. It would last maybe a year, but by year 2 or 3, it would be very difficult. So it just isn't a wise investment. I appreciate the digital version.
Laura, can you speak to, I appreciate what everyone's saying, and if we need more digital licenses in time, we always would accommodate that. But you had spoken at an earlier presentation about the course offering, the course offerings with ECCP.
So students can elect upperclassmen to take courses that our neighboring universities or colleges offer if we do not offer it. And one of my jobs is to go through those and make sure that they're not offering or requesting to take biology when we clearly teach biology here, right? And this is a very common one, criminal justice. Very often I get requests for introduction to criminal justice, and that's an easy no because we offer it here. But if they do take it here, it also provides them many opportunities to go beyond that then, and they can take the ethics of criminal justice and some of the other courses that I can't name off the top of my head. So in one sense, it does save us money as far as ECCP, but in another sense, it gives kids more of an opportunity to take further classes. A lot of our students who are taking are going into programs like police or firefighters, that they're very often taking these.
I thought that was one of the exceptional things about this resource is that it got into depth of a lot of areas that I didn't even fully appreciate were topics to be discussed, but also the careers in corrections and criminal justice and other areas. And so I think it kind of hits on all of those topics. So, anything else? Okay. Ms. Kozlowski?
I would motion to approve the criminal justice curriculum and resource adoption as presented in digital.
I second the motion.
Seconded by Mrs. Voigt. Anything further? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right,
We're just
and then-
going to stick around.
Yep,
I was just going to
we're
say,
just gonna roll right
we're going to have
into
the same
civics.
team.
All right, so next topic is overview of civics, and I want to thank Mr. Harland for bringing this forward and for your patience. And we had some loaded agendas the last couple months, but this, I think we're all really eager to get into this topic, so.
Yeah, I was just going to kind of say the same things, just as an introductory. You know, we have the same team here tonight just to share some information just based on the request and some other conversations. And so really the team is going to provide an overview of specific standards that we address and how we address them. And then we'll just really open it up to questions and discussion after that.
Okay. So not to repeat everything Ms. Gunnerman just said, because those are everything I was going to say. As you can see, it says May 5th. We ran out of time last month, so we are here this month to present it. And Amy is going to really just start kind of with a broad overview of social studies state standards here in Wisconsin.
So what you see here is actually our SDW vision for social studies. And so the idea is that through an integrated study, inquiry, and application of the individual disciplines of social studies, which you see in each of those bubbles there, all SDW students will experience instruction that is preparatory for active and lifelong civic engagement and informed decision-making. So that's really at the core of all of our courses. The idea also is that we will sequence our content so that social studies knowledge gradually builds over the course of the secondary experience in order to build those skills and knowledge.
I think I'll just add real briefly our trajectory for our students. Actually, I can't, 6th and 7th grade, what are 6th and 7th grade focus?
They, 6th grade is ancient civilizations, and then 7th grade is world geography.
8th grade would be U.S. history. Once they reach high school, they are studying human geography. 10th grade, they are studying world history. Junior year, they're studying U.S. history. And then their senior year, some juniors, some seniors, they take a semester of econ and a semester of government. And all of those are required courses. In addition, we do offer psychology and AP psychology at all of our high schools.
So in terms of preparing students, there are a couple of standards that we would identify as particularly important. Our inquiry standard, and specifically this is inquiry standard number 5, be civically engaged, and the political science standards. Number 1, identify and analyze democratic principles and ideals. Number 2, examine and interpret rights, privileges, and responsibilities in society. Number 3, analyze and evaluate the power and purpose of political and civic institutions. And number 4, develop and employ skills for civic literacy. So the civics test itself, which we'll talk a little bit more about, is meant to be a measure of both of those standards, the inquiry standard and students' understanding and mastery of those 4 political science standards. And so as Laura was mentioning earlier, when we look at our scope and sequence 8th through 11th or 12th grade, just depending on student choice, you can see all of the course titles and then the specific topics covered that also appear on the civics test. So starting right away in 8th grade, U.S. history with the Declaration of Independence, the American Revolution, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the Civil War. So all students experience units of study around those. The focus of human geography as it pertains to the civics test is around geography and the significance of national symbols and holidays. Into 11th grade, and you'll notice that 10th grade is not listed. 10th grade is world history. So in 11th grade, we return to U.S. history. It is intended to be a review of the earliest parts of U.S. history, which they covered in 8th grade, and then more in-depth moving into World War I, World War II, the Cold War, civil rights movement, and conflicts in the 20th century. And then in our U.S. government and politics course, they cover the 3 branches of government, powers of the federal versus state government, and then the rights and responsibilities of citizenship.
So to talk a little specifically about the civics test, I think it was 2017 that Wisconsin mandated that all students graduating from a Wisconsin high school have to successfully pass the civics assessment. It is locally administered by each district rather than a state standardized, so it's not like the pre-ACT or the forward testing. So school districts have control over when students take it, how students take it, where students take it. The civics test, however, does have to be comprised of 100 questions. The district is the one responsible for selecting those 100 questions out of that expanded test bank of 128 questions provided by the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. So this year with the new administration, there were some new requirements. And this question's flagged for 6520 special consideration, that there are 20 flagged questions that if you've lived in the United States for more than 20 years and are over 65, that you would be asked and have to answer so many of those, that those have to be on the test that we are locally giving to our school district, that those have to be included in the 100 that we are choosing. That is a link, if you have played with it at all, if you look at it, you too can take the civics test and see how you do. The sections of the civic test, which Amy touched on a little bit, these are the sections. So there is a section on American government, which we obviously cover in U.S. government, systems of government, rights and responsibilities of citizens, American history, different time periods of American history, and quite a few questions about symbols and holidays. How we administer it here in Waukesha, first of all, the state tells us they can take the test anytime during high school. So anytime 9th grade on, they could take it. We have been for the last many, many years, well, probably since 2017 or 18, have been administering this test to students during their junior year. And initially, I believe that why we chose our junior years, while they were in U.S. history, it seemed fairly relevant. And in case they didn't pass, that would give them more time to take it. Because they have to pass to graduate. They have to score 65% or higher, so 65 out of the 100 questions they have to pass correctly. But there's no limit for retakes. So if a student doesn't pass, he can take it again. If he doesn't pass the second time, he can study and take it again. Students who have an IEP, state mandate is that they must take the exam. They do not, however, have to pass the exam to graduate. And English learners can take their test in the native language. And I know that we do have a Spanish version that we do give to students. Here in Waukesha, we administer the test through Qualtrics. And we really use Qualtrics as a single centralized system that the district controls to deliver the test, for the students to take the test, and then it allows us an opportunity to collect and report and analyze the pass-fail. Each building is then responsible with tracking which students have not passed, and then that they have to reach out to those students and make sure that they have opportunities to relearn, reteach, and then retake. One thing that we are doing differently starting next year is we actually just had a meeting this morning about it with all of our assessment coordinators at the high school, and they would like to move the test to the senior year to the government class. That they feel that that would be more relevant, that they would have more time to cover some of the things. There was a change, again, with the new administration, there was a change to the test this year. We have heard a little bit, because the students just took it a week or two ago, that it seems to be more challenging. Now, the test is multiple choice, And when we kind of dug around in Wisconsin, pretty much 99% of the districts do a multiple choice test, whereas the actual citizen test is an oral and open-ended question test. But we are going to move it next year, which will kind of be the transition year, because a lot of them will have already passed it because they did this year as juniors. But we're going to start administering that test in the government class, starting next year.
So circling back to the inquiry standard number 5, which is around civic engagement, and specifically that students are civically engaged. We wanted to take a little bit of time just to talk about what that means and how we're addressing that beyond just the civics test, how it becomes part of practices within our courses. So across the board, students are using evidence-based research to form their opinions. They are practicing respectful debate on public issues, and they're building toward a constituent mindset. So that's the language of the inquiry standard, but it's also the practices in our social studies classrooms. What you can also see here is just kind of a different focus, narrowing down of what the focus is in each of the grade levels beyond the specific content or like historical events. So in 9th grade, the focus really is around global patterns and then local impact. And you can see in those bullet points what that would mean and how that could potentially transfer to those specific steps or components of the standard itself. With world history in 10th grade, the focus is really around historical precedents for modern engagement. And then in U.S. history, so that would be both 8th and 11th grade, the mechanics of the American democracy system. So covered on the test, but also part of our curriculum, because one of our responsibilities is to address that inquiry standard.
One other thing I'd like to point out is with a lot of our AP presentations that we've been doing specifically to social studies, I think of English as well too, as we talk about how they're really skill-based, and that's what the top teal words are, is that we do teach content, but we use the content to teach the skills, and the skills are really the driving force in our humanities courses. So just kind of putting it all together, you can kind of see how we cover all of the standards, all of the learning priorities from the social studies standards in all of our courses, really try to blend them and remain true to the skills. And we are open for discussion and questions.
Mr. Harlan.
Do you have, I guess, the recent history of how many students, obviously everyone has to pass it, but
Yeah.
how they scored, how many passed on the first time around? Do we have any of that data available?
No, it would be very different at each high school, but we can get it. That's what Qualtrics allows us to do, so we can get that data if that's something that you would like. I will just tell you from my 10 years at West, I would say very few students did not pass it their first time. We maybe had less than 15 or 20 probably not pass their first time. What their scores are, I couldn't speak to. On our meeting this morning, South told us that 40 students did not pass the first time. So that one I know. But
As we look at that historical data, we'd also have to consider that the passing expectation was raised. Originally, it started at 60 and was increased over time. So even then, it was majority of students were passing on the first trial.
Understood. Yeah, I just was more so curious what those actual results looked like. Obviously 65 out of 100 is a fairly low score overall, so I was trying to understand where we were performing to that. And then I know that you had mentioned that really I guess we don't necessarily start any of our civics curriculum until 6th grade. Is that into middle school? So there's nothing in elementary whatsoever?
I don't think Amy and I can speak to elementary social studies.
Well, we have the Impact Social Studies curriculum, which has sections that address that. And there's elements related to what is government, what is the structure of government, what does it mean to vote, what do election, I know there's a lot of elements of that that are embedded. It sounds like we're just not cross-referencing some of that to the standards. I guess I'm going to maybe follow up on Mr. Harlan's comment, because I don't want to get into analysis paralysis, although it sounds like we have data that would tell us how well students are actually passing, and even what items are maybe consistently they're not passing, which I think would be interesting. But I think to his foundational point is like, and I think what you've presented is extremely helpful because it gives us a really good picture of where these pieces are popping up in different places, which I think is my fundamental concern, that these pieces are popping up in different places. And it's not directed at any of you. It's just what are we doing to organize around civics education, which is so important. And for those of us who have high school students or have former high school students, you know, we've heard all the different ways that students take the tests, or the ways that they take the tests together, or they take the tests with whatever. I'm not saying any of that is true or false. I just don't know that there's rigor and structure to how we administer the test, other than we send the link, there's a time and place that they click the link. So I do think that in keeping with some of our strategies around consistency, school to school, what is the common experience? I like the idea of having it focused on if it's the government class. But I completely agree with the statement we heard earlier, which is government and civics are not the same thing, right? Civics is really how do we engage with the government? It's very different from what is the structure of all of it. So that's a little bit, you know, me on my soapbox. But I also know that we are a little bit gridlocked in our social studies curriculum, especially in our secondary social studies curriculum. So if we want to find a way to formalize that focus on civics education, or ensure that there's boluses of it as we're moving up through the grade levels, that might require us looking at our whole social studies programming and determining where does this actually belong. I don't love the idea of senior year government, great class, but now we've got 18-year-olds who are going to be asked and expected to participate, and it just feels like it's too late at some point. And I also, passing the test is, you know, it's checking a box, right? It gets back to some of the other conversations we had about, are we getting people to pass a test, or are we actually trying to educate on civics?
Yeah, I do think they are two different things. I think the test actually focuses more on the government content. A lot of it is the government questions about our government, where the standard of being the inquiry standard and being civic engaged is something that could and should be throughout each and every course.
I'll let you go.
Oh, no, yeah, a quick question. So I'm assuming that when the sixth graders come in and that they're obviously told that this is coming, there's no surprises, that they're probably mentioned in sixth grade, seventh grade, that there is this big test at the end. And in this course, we're going to focus on parts of it. As the teachers get to these parts, I'm assuming that the students are well aware that this is a big one. This unit is important. Make sure you take notes, or, you know, because, you know, so that they know that it's coming in from this year. These are the top, you know, bullet points that I need to walk away with. Is that something that is kind of progressed? I mean, are the middle school teachers along the way letting them know that you know, this unit's really important, not like the others aren't, but this one pay attention to, because otherwise it's a lot to take in as a sixth grader, seventh grader, eighth grader. There's a lot of information that they're learning. Is there a way that they do kind of like asterisk or let the students know that this is one that they should probably pack away? I mean, how does that look in the middle school level?
I think what teachers have done really well is try to, through their approach and their actions, make that really clear, less than necessarily articulating it, because I think that sixth grader may hear it. But if the way they're developing the unit and the way that they're engaging with some of those assessments is a deeper level of inquiry, a deeper kind of dive into that content, that's where they're hoping that they get that stickiness and where it continues. So they are aware as instructors of what those pieces are and how they connect year by year.
And I think that becomes more prevalent as the older grade levels, because it is nearing then and coming. And I would say also, it makes me cringe a little bit if kids are taking this test together and in big groups or whatever, because way back when, they were taking them in the auditorium in a group of like 100 or more students. But years ago, we put a stop to that, and they are not, that's why we moved to the US history classroom, so the teacher had more time. They were administering and proctoring them, and we literally had that conversation with the assessment coordinators at each high school this morning about how, when we move it to the government class, of how it has to be more consistent about when they take it. They're going to spend some time during our Summer Institute days in August looking at the test and talking about where it's going to take place. You know, our junior U.S. history teachers will be doing the same because they will be preparing them as well. So it has become more systematic over the last, I would hope, more than 5 years, but we are trying to do that.
Mr. Harlan.
I guess I wanted to inquire, is there any sort of like engagement capstone project where we're expecting our students, obviously once they've learned the material, to become, actually take the next step and become engaged and display that they have mastered those skills?
So quite a few different courses have been talking about what does a kind of a capstone or an experience look like? What would that look like in sixth grade versus eighth grade? The government team in particular has that on their to-do list now that they've had a bit of time with the curriculum, and now as they're thinking about their students who are with them taking the civics test. That is part of the work that they'd like to build as a common experience. What is a capstone project? How do they become involved in the school community, but extend beyond that to truly be civically engaged in the greater community? So we should have more to come on what that looks like as we move into next school year, and some common planning with that team.
So my understanding is that there are other states that intentionally design their middle school curriculums so that an eighth grader who is well-informed could reasonably pass the civics test. There's certain things, so if U.S. history is the focus of where we're doing what we're doing with eighth grade social studies, is it possible for us to allow eighth graders to take the test and then to work with them on gaps in understanding? Is there anything that we can do? I mean, concepts of popular sovereignty and consent of the governed, and just understanding, there's so many people that don't even know what kind of government the United States has. That seems like something that a 14-year-old could navigate. So can we take what we know about this test and at least ensure that some of our social studies standards through middle school are targeting some of that? Or do we do that? Do we do that objectively, or do we just say it's in there and so we trust that they're getting some of it? And maybe it's rhetorical. I mean, I'm not trying to grill you guys. I'm just trying to think openly about what we could do to address this. It just seems like getting people to pass the test with a D- or better isn't kind of the spirit of what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I think, I don't think the way you described it, are we doing that? I don't think that we are doing that. Can we do that? I think we can, yeah.
So it's been a bit. I vividly recall 2021 and 2022, when we were looking at social studies curriculum and talking a lot about some of the requirements that we have and the incremental requirements that we have. What's our, and we're going to talk about that
20
in
what we just looked it
July or
up.
August.
did.
Like, what is our cycle?
Not next year, but the following year, so 27, 28, we'd be investigating a new one, and then implementing it in 28, 29 for social studies. And there's clearly, I mean, Amy and I talk about it, like 8th grade and 11th grade, there's clearly overlap in those 2 years of content. And we've both been getting a lot of emails about civics curriculum recently,
Yeah. Like with
curricular resource,
Okay.
like
Makes
publishers.
sense, because it's an important topic, I think, right now, we're hearing from a lot of people. I also think there's a big gap between, we do the 8th grade US history, and then it's like, oh, world geography, and then it's human geography, and then it's world history, and then we come back to the US history. So there's obviously there's a 2-year gap in between all of that, and I think maybe we should look at that again. It does seem like some of the US history and civics things that might be on also the forward exam, 10th grade social studies, we might just have a hiatus around some of those topics. So I guess, I mean, Mr. Harlan, I know this was a hot topic for you, but it is for me too. I feel like maybe it's an opportunity for us to revisit this in looking again at our social studies curriculum. So if we know it's coming, could we get a head start on it and try to do some of that reference point around what
Yeah.
could we do differently to make sure that this isn't just an activity?
Yeah, I think one of our next steps would be just looking more at the course sequence with the standards beyond just 9 through 12, going a little bit deeper so we have a full picture of K through 12, and then see if there's opportunity, what activities are we doing, how closely aligned is it, look at just the course sequence and that sort of thing, and we can bring that back and give an update. And then from there, we can have more conversation. With our curriculum review timeline, even though we have the resource, we can always interact and add in activities and that sort of thing. So it doesn't mean we can't do anything just because we already have a curriculum resource. And so I think there's some things that we could do there. But I would start first with the K-12 look and look at all the standards and course sequence.
I mean, I think there are some, to your point though, is could we potentially, I know we look at taking the test earlier or multiple times. Could we start taking it freshman year, and if you obviously pass, then great, you understand from a basic level, but then that would still give us 3-4 years to ensure that we pass it and we're teaching the correct, but it would also help us understand then what that knowledge level is for our students entering into the high school. So I think that would be a great step that we could take in the short term there. And then obviously if we could dig into how we are administering and look at, again, the standardization of that across the district would be.
Yeah, I can confidently tell you that it is offered only in classrooms right now and individual students. Like, I know in the past, it may not have been, and it may have taken some schools longer to get there, but I am confident that they're all taking them in a classroom with a teacher administering them now.
So is there anything preventing us from incorporating this to a course, let's say government or US history, and having it be graded?
The test,
I don't think there's any statutory reason why we can't place a grade on the test, right?
I don't think there's any law that says that we can't.
We just have to show that they passed it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'd like to maybe revisit that at some point too.
Absolutely.
And we could make it a district requirement that passing rate is maybe higher than 65%. I mean, I wouldn't do that just to force people to keep taking it until they get the 85. I would do it because I want it to drive whatever instructional priorities we have around it.
Yeah.
I'm really curious what questions students are consistently missing?
I think that there's a lot of ways that we can do this. Specifically, if it's in a course like government, is they can use it as the pretest. And then the teachers can dig into those, which ones did my students not know? And then they can plan lessons, more lessons around those. And then they can give it as like maybe even a mid-semester test to see where they are, which questions are we still low on? And then at the end of the semester, like it could be the semester exam really, right? But I think that best practices around that, the teachers could really do that.
That would be me.
Someone's at your front.
So I think there's a lot of ways that teachers could work that into best practices in their classroom.
Ms. Kozlowski.
I would follow up on that and just trying to, I have a lot of opinions on this because I think it's something that is just so significantly lacking in a solid course. All of the other points are valid, right? They're getting pieces of it throughout different things over it. But to your point in government, and if government is something that's the senior year, I'm going to push back on that. I think this needs to happen sooner. The evolution that we are seeing in civics and activism and politics that we are seeing our youth become immersed in, if they don't understand how civics works and how the foundation of the government works and all of these pieces sooner, we are finding a generation that becomes civically engaged without understanding the foundations of everything. And I think there's a lot to be said about that, that if we are truly going to be encouraging civics discussions and all of these things, it needs to happen sooner. This is, 8th grade is a good stepping stone. Freshman year is probably a really good place that to have a unified course and study on this is required. However that looks like that, but they're just a robust understanding of what civic engagement looks like and what it does not, and how it was founded and what is expected, I think is just something I see all too often that's missed. All other points are.
So I think this is helpful, but it also kind of puts us in a position to say, are we doing enough? Are we doing it right? Do we have opportunities to refocus some of the classroom time to civics specifically, which I'm hearing would be of interest, but everything comes with trade-offs, so we're gonna have to figure out how to make that work. And okay. Anybody else?
Thank you.
Okay. No, thank you. Thank you. Super helpful. All right. Moving on to electives. And just a quick update on middle school elective course revisions.
So recently, Laura Ryan's going to stay up here, and we have some other friends coming up. So Mr. Kleinowski, who is the current principal of Horning, will be the next secondary director of teaching and learning, and Molly's joining the team wherever she fits. So as you know, we recently had a lot of work done around the middle school schedule and planning for that. And one of the pieces that we still needed to do was to go more in depth with our elective courses. And so that's when last time we were all here, we had proposed the idea of kind of chopping them up differently and putting them back together. So the team's going to give more detail around that as we move forward.
So tonight, because it's been a while, it's been a minute, we will review what we were really looking for in a new middle school schedule and where we landed as the approved middle school schedule for next year. And then we're specifically here to provide you with the course revisions for any of the elective courses that needed realignment due to the fact that they will have increased minutes. They will all increase in the number of minutes for their courses, but also the change in the number of electives that students are able to select from or select in general. So Kent will begin with kind of a review.
Sure. On the presentation that you will see up there is a mock schedule of where we are currently at with a 6-period day. So each one of those classes will be at the 59-minute. Sometimes we just say 1 hour for making it simpler. So some of the major goals when we were looking into this schedule is can we deliver that guaranteed viable curriculum in all subject areas? That was one of the big look-fors with the schedule. Another one is the time limit there, because we are running into some issues with 8th grade math in particular. And then are there ability to build into the schedule times for supports and enrichment? And then as well as we wanted to align with the high school AB schedule. So one of the most important things, and again, this is just a mock-up, so different classes will be different hours, electives will be different hours on there. On the left there where you can see what's really important to note is what 6th grade will look like. So based on state statute, all students take PE, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. But if we just focus on the 6th grade, on the other side, they will have a music choice, which Molly will go into in a little bit, into some more details about what that music choice looks like. And then they will have the elective experience, which Molly will also go into. In 7th and 8th grade, again, everyone has to take that PE, and then they have 3 other elective choices. And again, all the electives are on the AB in a 7th and 8th grade schedule.
So since January, the middle school team has been hard at work. So each of the middle schools conducted informational sessions for their teachers, going through much of the presented information that you all received in January as well. Students and families were then informed of the new schedule and course offerings that came with the new schedule. Students began selecting some courses. As we looked at all of our electives, we had to ensure that we were meeting the state requirements. So if we had to cover a certain topic, we had to make sure we had an elective and when it was going to be covered for all students. And then we also tried to design electives aligned with sort of a pathway format that students can elect to take if they are interested in that pathway. So again, with the increased minutes for each elective and the change in the number of electives that we're offering, we did have to do some revisions in some of our course outlines. And that's really what we're going to kind of like present to you today as a package of those changes.
As mentioned, the 6th grade electives include the Phi Ed and music requirements. Phi Ed is just one general class, and then for music, we currently have band, choir, and orchestra. This coming year, we will have added back music appreciation, and it's a non-performance based course that really outlines the history of music in America, includes a variety of different genres, and it really is meant to give the students a comprehensive look of where music comes from and how it begins our storytelling our storytelling past, and how we build community through music. The course outline looks dynamic. Hopefully you got a chance to look at that as well. And then in the 6th grade wheel, we currently run a 6th grade wheel that has specific required portions, art and food, family, and you, which is our family and consumer ed course that currently housed our human growth and development. And then the students would be able to choose the other 2 parts of the wheel that included French, Spanish, business class, and a tech ed class. The revision for the next school year will be to incorporate a world cultures course that is really an introduction to the 2 languages that we teach in our future world language courses. Really just the basics, getting them some experience thinking about food, music, holidays, common words, things like that, as a way to introduce what courses they might choose to take in future classes. The food, family, and you really is again about who they are as a human, relationships that they have, a family, and then wellness. It will include the required shaken baby syndrome unit of study. The Intro to Engineering course really is, again, a survey of the different fields that tech ed could incorporate, from woodworking, engineering, design, CAD, and some computer science. Touch of Business will incorporate entrepreneurship, marketing, a little bit of finance, and keyboarding introduction. And then the Art 6 is, again, just a survey of all the 2D and 3D arts that they could choose to take in the future. So that way our students really get a comprehensive look of all the different elective opportunities that exist for them in 7th and beyond, as a way to help them to continue to make educated choices on that pathway of interest.
So each of those that, just to reiterate, that Molly just went through would be approximately like a 7-week unit for the 6th graders.
All right, so in 7th and 8th grade, at the top here, we have art. You might remember last year when we came and I actually talked a little bit about what art would look like. What's nice about the process is the team has come together and they actually went a little bit of a different direction, and this is a really nice way to bring students into art into 7th grade. So that 7th grade art class is really going to take those 4 pieces and meld them all into that singular class. So they're going to get a nice experience of both 2D and 3D art, and you can see the different types of art that we have here. And then in 8th grade, they'll have the opportunity to focus a little bit more about whether it's 2D, so painting, drawing, digital art, or into the 3D with sculpture, wires, and jewelry and all that. So that's a really nice flow through between the grade levels. And then PE has probably some of the smallest changes, where really the biggest thing is just looking at the removal of the lifetime wellness and having just a PE 7 and 8. And then current world language is the one where we had a pretty big shift on that one. And so what will be happening is when students are in 7th grade, they will take, let's use French as the example, they will take French 1A. So that's the first half of French 1. And then in 8th grade, they will take French 1B, which is the second half of French 1. So by the end of their middle school path, they would have completed the entirety of French 1. This gives the ability to have it decompressed. They still take the test at the end with the goal of going into high school at French 2. Now, this shift also created a gap, and that is for our current 8th graders. So what we are doing for 1 year, and that's with our current 8th grade, or soon-to-be 8th graders, not current, they will have the opportunity. They will have the opportunity to take what has classically been known as French 1 or Spanish 1, and that would meet every day. Instead of these ones meet every other day, and that's why it's split over that amount of time. The work that's been done so far and will continue on is making sure that these classes are then, because of that, move from 45 minutes to 60 minutes, so they're also working at recalibrating like the length of what's going on in the units and the lessons and things like that. So that is the current work that is going on.
I did forget to mention that you have access to all of the course outlines in the executive summary. Except for the FIED 7 and 8. Those are not completed. They're still a work in progress. We still need some teacher teams to take a look at those. Not a lot of changes, to be honest, in those, but we do still have some work to do on them.
And then with the CTE courses, again, not new courses, just kind of rearranged. In some cases, we kept the same course titles because they were really working for the content. And in other cases, we decided to rename and kind of repackage things. So if you look at Family and Consumer Ed, we kept Cook, Eat, Live. And then in 8th grade for the foods class, they renamed it Global Foods and Trends. So there's one cooking or culinary-based class in each grade level. And then in 7th grade, we have a course that we recombobulated, if you will, which introduces students to careers in health and human services. So a great way to spend a little bit more time in depth introducing those courses that fall outside of culinary and education and hospitality. So things from healthcare and psychology and fire, I mean, you name it, it's in there. And then real life remains the same, like for like. That's our intro to child development and education strand. As far as tech ed, all 4 of those courses are found, hello everybody, founded out of the PLTW curriculum. And what they did was kind of, again, stir it all up and come up with 2 different pathways. They landed on engineering being one pathway, so an engineering 7 and then an engineering 8, and then building and fabrication 7 and 8. All of them will incorporate some form of computer-aided drafting and design and engineering principles as far as the prototyping process and things like that, but more focused on engineering and then a little bit more hands-on. For business, we renamed Shark Tank Biz Intro to Marketing and Sales and Biz Tech Intro to Business and Technologies. We kept keyboarding. There's not a lot of zhuzh you can do with that guy. But then we flushed out a little bit more in the personal finance realm. We do think that's an important topic to, again, continue to teach our students. And with all of the elective courses, it's really designed to get them a taste of what it would look like to take these classes in their futures. So, you know, we want them to want to take accounting and finance. And the best way to do that is to get them an introduction sooner and make it in a way that they feel accessible. So that's really the design of these courses, and the teacher teams really took a good hard look at what we were teaching and how we can make sure we're introducing it in these pathways.
So some of the next steps with this, again, this is certainly not a revolution. This is an evolution in how we have moved these courses. So it's a lot of the same work that we've been doing for a while, which is, looking at the content and really reshaping it for that 45 to 60 minutes. That's one of the biggest things. And then that every other day experience. So that's really where a lot of our time has been going on. There's still some class work, like with the PE, that is being worked on, and it should be done shortly. And taking a look at how are the assessments doing, are there tweaks that we need to make? Those are things that we continue to do, and all these teams will be continuing to come back together during Winter and Summer Institute to evaluate and to make any changes, tweaks, if you will, to what we're currently doing on this. One of the other things that we're excited for next year is being able to have a little bit more vertical alignment. So that's not just 6-8 and 9-12, but also looking at 6-12 alignments. So there'll be more on that as we move forward, but there'll be a lot of interesting alignment going on where we can have more conversations. And you talked about like solidifying things and making things more similar. That's part of the work that we're planning to continue to do.
Questions or comments? Mrs. Kozlowski.
This is really great. I think back on when we first started talking about the schedules and how we were moving it and just trying to figure out the number of minutes in the day and how that was going to work. And truly, the path from where we started to where you knew we needed to get to is outstanding. And quite honestly, I look at the schedules and how you're done, and I'm looking and saying, why haven't we done this sooner? I mean, when you look at this now and it's all of the hard work and the adjustments that had to, but exposing these kids to the variety of things versus the individual pick and choose and the different class sizes, I think it gives them a wide open freeway to really find what is going to be passionate for them and all of those things. And yes, I firmly agree that finance and accounting should be taught all the way through first grade. Maybe we start, but that's just my personal thought. I think you guys have really done an amazing job. I'm excited for the kids to be able to have what they're going to be offered in holistically, which is more than what they're getting now. I think it's really great. I'm excited to see where this keeps going.
Anybody else? Same. I appreciate the update. I think it would be really interesting just to kind of see how the interest falls. And this is kind of the first year with this new structure. I am curious on one topic, though, if you happen to know, or just generally, what is the typical breakdown between interest in French versus Spanish we see there?
I don't have the numbers, but.
No, I don't know the numbers
don't
off the
know,
top of my
just
head.
know.
Are you talking specifically to middle school?
Like how in the 8th grade when they're taking 1 or 2, or I'm sorry, Spanish 1 or French 1?
Yeah.
What is?
We have fewer French sections than Spanish sections, where I think we might only have 1, if 2, at each of the middle schools, and we have multiple Spanish sections.
Anything else? Okay, obviously tons of work in the background on this, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks to these guys and all the teams of teachers, too. They've been working, whether it's Summer Institute, PLC meetings, or Winter Institute. They've been really great about it. Laura's going to leave the table.
So soon?
She's welcome to stay, really.
Okay, we are moving into a few other category of topics. So first is our curriculum budget overview.
Yeah, so I'm just getting my slides on the screen, so just give me a moment.
while you're doing that, and I'll just maybe introduce this, we talked about this at the last meeting and asked that we take kind of maybe an annual opportunity to look at what we've been setting aside from budget capacity and how we are spending that on curriculum. And then I think we'll have some more strategic conversation going forward about the annual cycle. But I'm just bridging for you.
Thank you. I appreciate
You're
that.
welcome.
So yes, tonight I'm going to give a little bit of an overview. I have been partnering with Darren Clark, who is our Chief Financial Officer, regarding this similar topic in a different light for the F&F meeting on Monday. So I'm going to take the focus of like the curriculum and the planning. He's going to talk a little bit more about the account code structure we changed and that sort of thing on Monday night. I do want to say that last time that we were here to talk about this in January of 2025, Darren Clark did join the Teaching and Learning Committee meeting, and it was stellar just to show our collaboration around the topic. So a year ago, we were here together really presenting on behalf of the cabinet team, just where we were as far as curriculum adoptions, and at that time, just really acknowledging the need and the tightness around digital resources compared to traditional textbooks years ago that we could just continue using for 20 years. All those changes with the digital resources and having our guaranteed and viable curriculum resources really pushed us as a teaching and learning team to look at our process of review as well as our timeline for all the different curriculum resources. So here on this slide, when we first spoke last year, we had referenced just the idea or a scenario like in the upper right where so much money is put to the fund balance and it accumulates, and that money is there for reserve for core curriculum materials. Darren will speak a little bit more to that, but we've been doing that. On the bottom left, you can see this chart or this diagram. This really encompasses our process, and so we narrowed it down and try to clean up the language where the first part is to plan, the second part is research and select, the third part is update our guaranteed viable curriculum, and the last part is to implement. And with all these 4 stages, what we have done is mapped these out of when each one is taking place in what part of a school year or multiple years. And so the chart in the middle just shows how each part aligns with a year or a section of the school year. So I'm really proud of our team of like pulling this together, revising based on the needs. In February, the teaching and learning team came, and this is where we presented to you just a little bit of a process revamp or review as we bring curriculum resources for discussion to this committee. So prior to this, we had a process that really only allowed us to go from we didn't have a guaranteed viable curriculum to we need to research, pilot, and then ultimately recommend. And now that we've had these guaranteed viable curriculum resources, we're coming to the new stages where we need to consider renewal, and we needed to make a path for that. And so here, what we shared in February really is that process overview that does allow for multiple paths, ultimately bringing it to the Teaching and Learning Committee here to bring forward a recommendation. All this together, mixed together behind the scenes, we have lots of spreadsheets. I'm pretty proud of the color coding, but it all does align. So on the very top, with the most yellow, you'll see that this is our timeline, just like a capital improvement plan for buildings and grounds work. This is our 10-year ongoing curriculum plan, and you can see that every line is for a different subject, and so we've identified every year, every subject for teaching and learning, what phase of the plan that subject will be in. And so you'll see here just the screenshot, we had a lot of implementation. And then after that, what we have is our annual budget sheets. With the partnership between teaching and learning and the business services, we've reviewed and revised our account coding structure so that we can have better data and more accurate and more timely and reliable. And then what our team does is every year we plan just out of our curriculum instruction work, we plan for every subject, and every subject has a sheet, but on the very top is if that resource or that subject is up for adoption. So here you can see that AP, there were some that were in the research and select phase, and then in science in the middle, the very top of our budgeting sheets is allocated for all those new adoptions. Compared to then on the upper right, you have ELA, that is research and select. It doesn't mean we weren't purchasing anything for research and select. It just means we weren't in a large adoption for any level or any class. It also doesn't mean for science that there was nothing else we purchased. We have annual costs in every subject as far as the microscopes being balanced and all those things, piano tuning. All those things still have to happen even when we are doing curriculum adoptions. So with your support, I'm excited to share just a summary of our recent curriculum resources that have been approved. These would include several of our AP course offerings. You've seen Laura up here time after time with the AP courses. Again, those were such a focus because prior to recent years, the subject matter for the AP class was factored in. So if it was AP Psych and was part of social studies, it was factored into the whole social studies budget. So we just really never got to the AP classes with the budget allocation. So we revamped our approach and pulled AP out to make sure that we were ensuring even those classes had guaranteed and viable curriculum and were continuously renewed. So we've talked about a lot of the AP course offerings, AP Stats, AP Bio. We have also talked about secondary science that's being used this year. We also been working on implementing the new world language that was Spanish 1, 2, 3, and 4. We had like more of a phase-in process because we wanted to ensure that the kids were successful with a higher level of rigor of coursework. And then most recently we talked about, and it was approved for the elementary science. So the grand total is well over $1 million, and this does not include our annual expenses for each subject. It does not include any assessment budgeting that we also take care of, other teaching and learning things. It does not include anything with student services, so this really is just the curriculum annual uses, but these are the adoptions that we've brought forward. So huge celebration, and want to, really thank everyone for your support here. Darren will speak to this a little bit more, but because these are recent curriculum approvals, they may fall in different budget years. So for example, science elementary curriculum, we just approved that last month. And so our financial strategy is that we'll be purchasing that after July 1, so it will be part of next year's budget. And so with each of these, we plan and strategize of which budget year it's coming from. We'll continue to do our curriculum course reviews. Upcoming curriculum recommendations that you'll see coming forward is a few more course offerings for AP. We had previously talked about the new course for AP Business. We'll continue the world language piece. Tonight we talked about the social studies elective for criminal justice, so that would be added. So these are things that we'll talk more about this year if we haven't already. And then as we look forward to the 27-28 school year, we are planning financially and teaching and learning wise that's a year that we'll be looking at K-12 math throughout the system. With our revised process, that's one of the things we wanted to leverage is that math revisions were looked at systematically, and reading or language arts was also looked at systematically, but not the same year and probably not back to back. So we have allotted for that as we move forward. So again, a lot of really great work on behalf of the teaching, learning, and the business services department of just collaborating and planning to ensure we have the financial resources for the resources our teachers and students need. That was a big overview. Lots of great celebrations. Like I said, Darren's going to talk more about some of the financial things on Monday, but I'm happy to dig into some of the questions, even if they're financial or not.
Thank you for this update and for pulling all of this information together, which I know you have in all those different spreadsheets. It's good to see it all in one place. I think there's some real highlights with this work in that we've kind of learned this over the last few years, right? We had the opportunity to have some incremental funding to really put toward structured curriculum, make sure that we've got consistent offerings from school to school, which is great for our students. It's actually also great for our teachers, gives people flexibility, great for our subs. So there's a lot of benefit to having all of that alignment. These sometimes can look like big numbers. Like this was a year where, I know we're looking at K-12. I know when we did ELA and when we do social studies, like these are big investments that we're making. We're a district that's serving, between 10 and 11,000 students. And so while we have to make these big investments in curriculum, we also have the budget capacity to do these things if we plan accordingly. So I think with the work that we've done over the last couple of years, we're able to set aside the right resources to make sure that we can fit this in. So this is exciting.
I appreciate you saying that. I can't help but share, but one of the things Darren will talk about is we've really flipped the budgeting process for teaching and learning. And I've worked in other districts. It is not like this. This is a completely unique approach where rather than financial allocation being given, because that's how much you got last year, regardless of ECCP courses, you get this much and we have to prioritize. We flipped the script and said, these are our curriculum resources. What's up for renewal? This is where our needs are at. If we have this much money, we can do this. If we have this much money, we can do this. And so we've really flipped the process, and I think we're better together because of it.
My first year on the board on the T&L committee, the entire teaching and learning department budget was less than we spent on high quality curricular resources this past year. And it wasn't that they weren't getting the resources, they weren't getting some of the resources, but there was always an incremental request. And it was, let's go and see if we have the resources to do that where we're trading off something else versus planning ahead. So this is almost a 180. Thank you for that. Mrs. Kozlowski.
Yeah, if I take a look at where we were 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when Dr. Piasek joined, and learning all of the things, for many of you have heard me talk in the past, will be that it was very disheartening for me to find out in the 7th largest district that we had the majority of our teachers that had to self-curate their lesson plans. We were inconsistent across grades, we were inconsistent across schools. And investing, this is what we do. Our job is education. We are here to give the best education that we do to the students that we serve. And piggybacking on what we just saw from the middle school program and looking at what we've been able to invest, whether that was ESSER or now, yes, taking a look at the financial impact, which, we hear a lot about long-term planning. We've started long-term planning 5 years ago. And that was all with understanding what we needed to spend, timing it out. And yes, your spreadsheets that are very big with many colors serve a very valid purpose because it helped us navigate with finance the timing that we need to have funds available to do that. And it is unprecedented. And there's a lot of things that we're doing that are unprecedented with the focus on making sure that we are providing the best education. There's so much to be proud of when we talk about how much we've spent. The 1.1 million that you just showed is recent, but I think in just raw math, as I was sitting here, I believe we just tapped just under 11 million over the last 6 years in investing in our educational platforms for not only for our students, but for our staff. If that doesn't speak volumes about where our focus is and every child and every staff member in this to provide that, I don't know what else does, because this is what we're here to do. And And we're not done yet. I'm not selling a pillow, but we're not done yet. And we're going to continue to enhance and refine. And I know that at the F&F meeting, Darren's approach is really looking at how does that layer into the future. So we're dealing with the present and the past. His is going to be the future as to what we know and how we do that in. And these are discussions that I don't think other districts are having. I'm pretty excited about this. So thank you for all your work.
Mrs. Koenig, thank you.
Thank you. As someone who lived in the world of self-curation in this district for many years, I am extremely proud. I'm going to echo a lot of what you said, Ms. Kozlowski, of the incredible turnaround that we've made. Being a part of this, or I couldn't be more proud of the work we've done, and one of the motivators for me to retire and then come back and want to come and run for, like the position on this board, to come to the other side to try to do what I could to, do the types of changes that we have been making. My only regret is I wish I could have been teaching long enough to be able to benefit, but this is amazing. This is truly what it looks like to put our students first and our staff first, and to during that cohesion, that linear progression. Everything we've done has just been amazing, and I know it's because of our administrative staff too. Just the collaboration we've been able to do is amazing, and I couldn't be more proud of the work we've done, you've done. It's been amazing.
I think that's the nice thing about this process, and I'm here presenting, but our team is here. Some of our team are at home. Our teachers, day in, day out are working on this. But this process and the plan is not about one person. Really, Darren can look at the chart and see that in 27, 28, we're looking at math. No surprise. And so it's really about all of us working together. And like I said, I'm presenting, but our team of directors and across the board have done a lot of work, as well as our coordinators and teachers. So,
And I'm just going to add a couple last thoughts just for either folks who are new to the board or new to the committee or just new to the conversation. For context, so, and we know we're not quite to the Hadfield discussion. We have Mr. Elliott coming to join us soon. For me, the merger decision that we made with Whittier and Hadfield in 2021 was a very difficult decision, obviously, made more difficult by the fact that we did not have consistent curriculum between those two schools. And so in order to bring them together, we had to acknowledge that some students were going to be in an environment with learning resources and instructors that were unfamiliar with where they were coming from. And at the time we were talking about Bridges Math, and that was important. It was just an important first step, but that was kind of the beginning, and I think it was a big catalyst for me. And then the other point, just in looking at how much work has been done, and you mentioned the staff and the instructional teams and the advisory conversations and the pilots and stuff. And that was the thing that motivated this separation of teaching and learning from student services, because the amount of work and curricular work that the teaching and learning committee had to do, we were having 4 and 5 hour long meetings, and then we would get to the student services topics, and we were in a hurry, and those were the wrong topics to be accelerating. So we really created the space and the time and capacity to do some of those things, but it was driven out of some of the historical necessity to make sure that we could focus on getting consistent and high quality curriculum without trading off some of the services for the students. So I think we've really come a long way with all of that. And thank you for allowing us to do that. Okay, more on that at the F&F meeting, I think. Okay, next up, update on charter school contracts.
I know we're all waiting for Mr. Elliott, and he's got a great presentation. Thanks, Mike, for being here. So I just really have a quick overview of some of the work that we've been doing around our charter schools. As you know, we have Waukesha STEM Academy, eAchieve Academy, Waukesha Academy of Health Professionals, Waukesha Engineering Preparatory Academy, all within our school district of Waukesha, where the school district of Waukesha is the authorizer of the charter contract for these schools. A year ago, I was here with the charter school principals, and we provided an overview of each school. Each principal talked a little bit about what makes them unique and a little bit different. And you know, everyone is just very different, from STEM to eAchieve to the charters at South, where the students are just taking a couple different classes, but they're within the South building. So I wanted to just elaborate a little bit more. Since then, I have shared with you that we've been meeting, I've been meeting with the charter school principals. We've been digging into their contracts. We've been talking about similarities and differences. We've did some marketing efforts this year together. And so what I wanted to share tonight is just a little bit of an overview of the charter school contracts. So currently, these 17 areas are the sections of the contracts that we have for each of the charter schools. What we found is that in working with the charter school principals, and we looked at each contract, they were all a little bit different, and not just to their unique charter. Just they all had some different languages and that sort of thing. And so it really led us to talk as a cabinet team, and really a lot of collaboration with the business services department again, because normally these contracts would go through F&F from a contractual standpoint. But what we wanted to talk about tonight was really a revision of some of the contract language moving forward, and then bringing them forward through the teaching and learning lens as far as a contract. We can take them through F&F or here, it doesn't matter, but we are all looking at it with a different lens. So regardless of the charter school and when it was renewed, each of these areas are within the contract. What I want to highlight a little bit is Section 3, which is educational programming, Section 7, which is staff qualification and personnel issues, and Section 8, which is student health and safety and student discipline. Right now, these sections are all in the contracts. What the contract doesn't have is our link to our school district of Waukesha policies or our established practices. And so what I'm seeing as I attend governance board meetings and planning with the principals, what I'm seeing is a confusion or a disconnect between whose role is what. So for example, 7, staff qualifications and personnel issues. So for example, the eAchieve Charter School, the governance board does not determine how many staff they're going to have or what qualifications they need to have as far as licensure. Those are all within our School District of Waukesha policies through the Human Resource Department with Sharon. And so without that clarity, it leaves, wonderings and questions, where to me, the staff one, that's a little bit easier. However, when it does come to educational programming, that's where I think we could benefit from a little bit more clarity. Clear is kind. And right now, some of the schools, we have their courses in our course catalog. Some of them we don't. Some of them have a different course catalog. And so what I would really recommend is just some language in the contract to bring clarity around decision-making in the area of educational programming specific to course approvals. The other area is student health and safety and student discipline. Again, we have our School District of Waukesha policies and our established practices that are related to that area, and any work that Ryan and his team do with any of the charter school are directly in line with those pieces. But that level of detail is not in the contracts. What I'd like to do is propose moving forward when we do bring a contract, and the next one coming forward would be one for South Engineering Preparatory Academy and one for South Health Academy. Those contracts are up for renewal this summer. And what I would propose is that we bring forward a contract that has a little bit more clarity around the state statutes and what's required in a renewal contract, as well as helping to clearly define whose decision-making and whose responsibility is what. One of the things that the team of principals and I noticed was that even the area of governing board was different in contracts and different in practice from charter school to charter school. And so each governing board is really required to be a nonprofit 501c3 corporation, and it's independent of the district. And so we would want proof that that is really in place. They also need to have bylaws. There's also requirements regarding the board composition. Really, this speaks to the percentage, no less than 50% can be school employees. And so for each charter school, the governing board is a little bit of a different makeup, where the South Engineering Prep Academy and the Health Academy, they have people in the community that work in these professions that are guiding the student work, the student experience off school sites, where some of the other schools like STEM is not and eAchieve is not. There's no one really in a virtual like work environment advocating for that. Now there are parents on those governing boards, and also other people. But I think we could just be better and stronger together if we have a little bit more clarity around what is required, but also what is expected from us as a school district being the authorizer for the charter school. Another piece within that I think we could talk about is the frequency of meetings. So right now, some of them meet monthly, some of them meet quarterly. Our direct involvement is not necessarily required. It is beneficial when I go and we have these strong partnerships. So these are just examples of just another area or ways that I think we can tighten up just who's doing what and who's responsible for what, and then ultimately that these changes you would see in a future charter school contract that would be coming forward. Like I said, South is the next ones that are up. Along these revisions, I've also just really focused on the Wisconsin Resource Center for Charter Schools. They're doing some updating right now, so some of these links aren't active right now, but I'm continuously consulting that and other people and the principals throughout this process. So I'm excited to even show you the letterhead of the next contract, really showing that the Waukesha Engineering Preparatory Academy, and one will be for the other South Academy, is really within the school district of Waukesha, and that really goes back to our branding and all the things that we offer. And so we anticipate bringing that forward this summer for you to review and discuss and consider. I'm happy to talk any more about charter schools or contracts. Again, I just wanted to give a high-level overview.
So there's a lot of work happening behind the scenes before we actually see those contracts in front of us, obviously. I just want to acknowledge that those folks that are serving on those charter school governance boards are incredible servants to the district. So, and our relationship as a board and our contract is with the governing boards of those charter schools. And so this is an important part of really defining how we work, and similar to how we oversee the administration of the district, they're taking an active role in overseeing that too. But it's just a little bit different when you're an instrumentality charter situation versus maybe an independent charter. So it's an important part of that working relationship, and you're putting obviously a lot of thought into that and how that's going to work most effectively. Okay. Thank you.
I think it's time for Mr. Elliott to come on
All
up.
right, it's finally time, the grand finale. I'd like to welcome Mr. Elliott to the table. Our final topic tonight is an update on the Hadfield Achievement Gap Reduction Grant.
All right, thank you very much. We are well past my bedtime. No, I'm just kidding. I was up at 4:45 in the basement riding 20 miles on my bike, but we can do this. So yeah, I'm here for the annual AGR report. I didn't go into a lot of depth with our numbers this year, but just keep in mind as we go through these that the state average of students with special needs is 14%. We're at 38%. You know we have high poverty. I talk a little bit about the turnover in this, but I'm just extremely proud of where we've been and where we've come and where we are. When I announced my retirement, a team of parents, teachers, assistants, students got together and narrowed down what we really believe in at Hadfield. We had this big, when Brandy and I first started, we brought together our staffs and we came up with values and things like that. They narrowed it down to this moving forward. The one that I really want to point out is we meet students where they're at and stretch them to meet their potential. We feel strongly, we believe strongly, it's in our core that if a student comes in, like this year in second grade in February, having no records of their school previously, maybe they attended, we believe that that student needs to be met there and stretched. We're not just gonna, we're gonna love them, support them, but learning needs to take place as well. And that's a core belief that everyone in our building believes in. How did we use the grant? First of all, it's roughly $450,000 from the state. It's quite a bit of money. I am very aware of and in tune to the data. Our team is as well. We take those resources where we need it. We put those resources where we need it. Instructional coaching and intervention has been a large part of the grant. When we look at our students and where their needs are, we try to make smaller class sizes in those areas as well. And that we look very strategically at it. An example is this year, we got, I think it was like $75,000 more than we had projected. So instead of just taking that money and hiring somebody for anywhere, we looked at where our needs were and we hired an extra person to work in first grade. We wanted to be very cautious about that and be very intentional about it. And I'll show you why in a little bit. Reviewing what we left you with last year for our goals, we wanted to make executive functioning how we do things, incorporate it into our lessons, make it a part of our students' lives. Our entire staff got Cox campus trained and literacy trained on the science of reading. We emphasize phonics, we emphasize writing. All of the research shows that students that can do well in phonics and put what they've learned into writing, actual writing with a paper and pencil, makes or leads to higher growth. We really work hard on that. We have strong grade level interventions, and our team meetings are very intentional as well. We have reading, math. They meet once a week, they meet as a team. We include our special ed teachers in those meetings, and they're very targeted towards the next steps for our students. Our executive functioning focus, as you all know, when Brandy left, we restructured. I created a position called the Dean of Differentiated Supports. That person's name is Maddie Artis. She's a former special ed teacher. She has developed a step-by-step curriculum along with some teammates that she has. And each month we have a focus, and this is our focus, and we intentionally teach these things. Students are reinforced every day. There's daily lesson plans, there's videos, the student announcements are that way, and there's a big community gathering at the end where students are awarded based upon these executive functioning goals and focuses. You'd be shocked at the kindergartners that can talk about their brain and how it works. I had a student, we were in an IEP, student is not extremely verbal. She went home and she was talking to her mom about the prefrontal cortex and all different. Children, if you expect them to use big words and you teach them and you scaffold it for them, they can do it. I don't want to hear anybody say they can't, because they can. I've seen it. I've seen 4-year-olds talk about it, and they know what it means. Like I said, we did a lot of reading, a lot of math. We also have a lot of community partners. I want to point out this young lady shooting baskets. She's a first-team All-American basketball player at Carroll. She also came and read with our kindergartners. She's going to be a nurse. What a role model for our kindergartners to see that. We have a lot of community partners. Carol has been, my connection with the athletic department has really helped us. I'm an old retired football player from there. I've stayed in touch with the program. Having athletes come over and work with our children and seeing something in their lives besides trauma and struggles is amazing for them. We have a 5th grade student that his big brother just got into med school in TCU. They've exchanged phone numbers. They stay in touch. The kid, his whole trajectory of life has changed. So I can't underestimate those partnerships we have. Our staff retention is high. Our teams trust each other. It's super important because last year we turned over 109 kids. This year, 89 already. We got 9 in 1 week in February. We have, from my calendar alone, we have held over 210 individual parent meetings with different families. That's outside of parent-teacher conferences, outside of the daily check-ins, and outside of anything teachers have done without me knowing about it. So just in my calendar alone, between problem-solving meetings, IEPs, follow-ups, 210. And we meet parents when they can meet. If it's late at night, I helped a parent at midnight once on a Saturday. I met a parent on Christmas Eve for clothing. We do it when they need it. It just happens. Now, our results in literacy are very good. Our first grade numbers went down a little bit. We got 15 new students in first grade. But the thing with literacy is the bar moves. So at the beginning of first grade, if they can read 5 words in a minute, they've passed. By the end, I believe it's 26. But also students are coming in the middle of the year and things like that. When we first started Act 20, we had 100 students on reading plans. As of yesterday, we had 65. However, forward results came out today that are embargoed, but I can say that on our early check, 10 to 12 more kids will be dropped off reading plans on that as well. It was pointed out earlier, way earlier in the night, that when I first started at Hatfield, 90% of our children were failing reading on the state test. We're below what was expected. I can't tell you the number, but I almost cried today when I saw it. It's a good number this year. Same thing with math. 90% of our children were failing. That number is much higher now. Here's our benchmark results for math. This benchmark does not change. So when they take it at the beginning of the year, it's the same standard when they take it at the end of the year. So what we want to do is we want to get kids out of red into yellow and the yellow into green. And as you can see, we've done that. I added this bottom part here. This is, my math coach tried to explain it to me, and I'm not super smart. But I asked her, I said, all right, so if a school really stinks, what would their percentage look like? And she's like, it'd be below 50. I said, okay, great, that's all I need to know. So we are exceeding that. But I really want to point out 4th grade. They are one of our teams that has been together, and they are kind of driving what our next steps are. They work together collectively really well. Not all our teams do, but they've taken it to kind of the next level. So they know like how long the lessons, which is basically like what we used to call a unit, take. And then at the end of that, they look at the kids' skills and their gaps, and they look at what their strengths are, and they pull a group of kids. And if I'm really good at teaching common denominators, I take that group that struggles with that. If somebody else needs to accelerate, they take that group. So that's kind of where we are headed next at Hatfield, is to get to that point. And that's because of the staff retention and because we know each other. So that trust is developing there, and it's getting to that point where we are ready to move to that next step. So moving forward, We are welcoming a new leader. John has been, Jen hooked him up with me on email. We started talking. He's been over once. He and I talk regularly. He went to a PTO meeting tonight. He's coming over tomorrow for some one-on-one meetings. I've created a Stuff for John folder that has like our community partners in it and all kinds of stuff like that. That's a big step forward. Continue to build on the momentum, continue to strengthen our culture and welcome all of our new families to Hatfield. We've already had a pancake breakfast for the kids coming over from Hawthorne, a tour of the school. That we had about 20 teachers volunteer on a Saturday morning. They came over, our PTO was part of that. And then the highlight yellow is what I talked about with fourth grade, and that's team meetings that address the needs across our grade level. And then, as always, because of our transient population, we really have to focus on what we can control, September to June. And we have to focus on that, and it's hard. Like, one of my reading coaches today said, I wish fifth grade would have grown more. And I said, well, we welcomed 9 new kids to fifth grade, and I was outside watching them play flag football, and there were no fights. And I'm like, that group used to fight every day in third grade at recess. So they're out there playing flag football without me having to be the quarterback, and they've grown in so many other ways as well. So we can control September to June. We can't always control summer. So I thank you very much. That's me and Lori with our 60s outfits last year. It's hard for me not to get emotional about this because it's been a lot of work. But between you guys providing the guaranteed and viable curriculum, us making sure that we do our job and we care about children, we are making a difference, and the trajectory is. When you look around the state at similar schools, and I've done it because I said earlier in this month that I'm a competitive guy, I don't know a school that has the turnover of students and the special ed population that we have that can compare with us. There's a lot of excuses out there. We don't make excuses. It's tough. But the people in Hatfield don't make excuses. And I really thank you guys. I'm looking forward to riding my bike in retirement, but I do thank you very much, and I've given you all I can for 6 years, so thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I'm sure there are some comments, so Thomas, you want to start?
I would just like to say thank you. It has absolutely been a pleasure getting to know you and know the staff since I've joined the board. I mean, all the numbers that you've presented, obviously it is a testament to the work that you and your team have been doing. So nothing but thanks, and yes, enjoy the many, many miles of cycling in the years to come.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm such a fan. You know that. I'm so grateful for what you've done, and I am going to leave it with a comment that both you and Brandy said when I first joined the board, and we started talking about where the merger was in the starting point. And it was, we can do hard things. And if I say that that could have been any more true in the gift and the skills that you've given these kids and the staff, it would be that. And they rise, they overcome, and they amaze us all. The last visit was happy learners. I left with watching happy learners in a happy environment. Thank you for all you've done. That impact is huge on all of us.
Thank you. That's really, I remember one of the interview questions, what is your 100-day plan? And I said, if I see kids happy in the hallway and they know where they're going, that's data that tells me we're doing well. So thank you for saying that, pointing that out.
Anybody else? Ms. Koenig?
Thank you. Yeah, Mike, you've just left such a legacy there at Hatfield, and it's the Hatfield way now. Now it's an expectation because you've showed what can happen with the kind of passion and commitment that, you led that entire staff. They're right there with you. Now it's the Hatfield way. So even though you're going to go off and ride your bike and enjoy and watch from a distance, you've embedded something so incredibly powerful there that has now just become the Hatfield way. So I'm looking forward to seeing them just continue in your spirit, just continue the work you laid the groundwork for, and I think we're going to see it continue. And it's, of course, because of you. So thank you so much for all you've given.
Definitely. Anybody else? Mrs. Boyd?
You can go first.
I greatly appreciate you. I also want to acknowledge, having gone through a number of these update presentations, right? A lot has changed over the last few years. And one of the things about the grant, fortunately, we were able to transfer it, and it expanded with the increased number of students that we had, which is a great resource to have. It also gives you the flexibility to apply those resources in the way that you think are most appropriate for the school. And I can see that has evolved over time, and that's you being responsive to the staff that you have, the community that you have, the needs of the students. And it wasn't like, well, we're just going to go with small class sizes because that's the thing that we do. There were those conversations about, well, maybe that's not the next best thing or the thing that we need right now. And so bringing in some of the coaches and bringing in some of the other resources and responding to going from the two principals to one, and then having that special level of intervention. So I think being creative and resourceful, I think that reflects just exceptional executive leadership in taking, as Carrie said, hard things and acknowledging that instead of where I think the initial feedback was, well, we're going to have to lower expectations if we go down this pathway. And instead, you continue to raise the expectations on the students, on the staff, on us, on the families. And we've seen that just in how you and your staff have gone and personally engaged students and brought them and their families into the conversation. And so it's awesome to see those numbers moving. We've gone from some really complicated charts and like following kids from one box to another box. And that was helpful in us figuring out what is actually happening and how do you respond to that. And this is equally rewarding because when you paint the picture of what the challenge is that we've been asked to address, you've been asked to address, it's a remarkable challenge. It's something that most elementary principals don't have to address. And you've taken it head on and raised expectations and overcome some challenges that I think others probably would have run from. So grateful for all of that.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Personally, I grew up on a different side of the tracks where we had struggles. I always say if I could write a book, 50 cents changed my life because I could take 25 cents down to basketball practice on the bus, 25 cents back. That gave me a leg up. And that's always what I wanted to give our kids. Give them a chance. Somebody gave me a chance, give them a chance.
I've spent a lot of time at Hatfield, and I've seen what I call the love factor, and I really give you a lot of credit for that. What you're saying here is it's not just a statement. It's the leading with empathy, people first mindset. It's the meeting the students where they are and stretch them to meet their potential. It's supporting one another without judgment as a staff, et cetera. And just the persistence to do the best that you can in a community, really coming together for what's best for the kids. And I can't say enough thanks to you for your leadership. Thanks for the amazing things you've been able to do at Hatfield. It's truly, truly been, a wonderful, wonderful outcome.
Well, thank you, everybody. I've appreciated it. And I know it's going to continue. I know we got great people. John's in a good space to lead. He's excited. He's got some energy that I currently don't have right now. So you do reach a point where, this becomes a 24/7 job, and there is a time where you kind of run out of that energy. But I haven't lost my love for people and kids. That'll never change. So thank you very much.
Yeah, appreciate the update, Mike. Thank you and congratulations, and enjoy the last few days of school and go out in style. Best of luck to you.
We're going to end strong.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well done. All right. We are just about done. Are there any recommendations for future committee meetings? Okay, seeing none. We will not have a committee meeting in June, so our next committee meeting will be Tuesday, August 4th at 7 PM here in the boardroom. So we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.